the FBI received a tip concerning a possible sighting of Adam Mays in a wooded area near Zion Hill Church on County Road 183 in Alpine, Mississippi. At 6:50 p.m., an officer observed Alexandria Bain in a heavily wooded area approximately 100 yards behind the church. Officers immediately issued commands to Adam Mays to show his hands. Mays pulled a semi-automatic pistol from his waistband and shot himself in the head and was later pronounced dead at a local hospital. Other agents moved in to rescue Kalia and Alexandria, who were lying on the ground nearby. The girls were hungry, thirsty, and dehydrated. They were immediately given water as they were escorted to safety.
Mr. Hayes began to raise his head. I could see a weapon in his hand. I hollered gun 3 times loud to let my team know that there was a weapon involved. We ordered Mr. Hayes to drop the weapon numerous times. Mr. Hayes raised to his knees, never brandished the gun toward any of us or the children. At that time, he took his life.
Good evening. I'm Jean Casares of In Session on the True TV network, in for Nancy Grace. Thank you so much for joining us. If you have just heard from that news conference, the manhunt is over for 35-year-old Adam Mays, and in a stunning miracle, both of the missing Bain girls, they are alive. For the very latest on these fast-breaking developments, let us go straight to CNN correspondent Martin Savage, who is live on the scene. Martin, how were these girls found?
Gene, this was the answer to the prayers of many local folks here, that they were found alive and well. Let me tell you how this all broke down, and you pretty much got a summary there from the FBI, but they got a tip about 5:30 last evening. The information we have is that they were told to check out what might have been a cabin up around this area. We're up at the Mount Zion Church, and it's about 100 yards down this road where all the activity took place. And authorities had a SWAT team in the area. They dispatched it, and they moved in on this wooded area. And as they moved in, that's when they spotted one of the young girls laying on the ground. It's also when they spotted Adam Mays, and when they gave the command for him to show his hands, instead he pulled out the gun and shot himself. So all of this played out in the evening hours. It is the end of a long ordeal, but it is only the beginning of this investigation. It still continues, Gene, and more arrests have been made.
You know, Martin, to get the logistics straight for everybody, there was a church and there was a cabin. Where was Adam Mays and where were the girls when authorities converged?
Yeah, well, this is to show you just how difficult it would have been if authorities had not been given a tip. If you look behind us, you can see it's densely wooded back there. It is off of this road, up a trail, and then branching off of that trail by about 30 feet is the area specifically where Adam Mays shot himself. Very difficult to find, very thick brush. It took trained experts and a SWAT team to eventually find that location. So they were tipped off. It is probably maybe 100 yards in that direction. Not easy to find, only came through because someone in the public called. And that's how we knew it was going to end, Gene.
Everybody, Martin Savage is in Mississippi right now. He is in Alpine, Mississippi, at the scene. Martin, do we know how close the girls were to Adam Mays when he shot himself?
Well, we're told by authorities that they were directly in front of him, only by a couple of feet, laying on their stomachs. In other words, and it doesn't take much imagination to figure this out, that they had to witness at least one more tragedy before they could be rescued, and that was Adam Mays taking his own life. We found the specific area. You can see where there is blood all over the ground. It's clear that's where Adam shot himself. There's also indications of wrappings, bandages, and the initial attempts of first aid that was rendered at the scene. But what you realize is that for the last couple of days at least, they have been living an existence in the woods, out in the open, without shelter, without apparently much food or water either.
This is the actual scene right here. This is the actual scene right here, video exclusively shot by CNN, showing where this all went down last night. As you can see, dried blood on the leaves, flies now on the leaves. These two young sisters on their stomach as law enforcement moved in and as Adam Mays took that gun and shot himself in the head. Do we know if the girls had eaten anything? Because it's been 13 days. It's been a long time since they were abducted.
Right. You know, it's hard to believe that they could have existed in this kind of terrain for that period of time directly. So it's thought that they may have come here over the last couple of days. One thing is clear, they didn't have water, and they didn't appear to have food, just judging by their demeanor. We also know that they had been apparently out there and exposed in the woods, judging by the poison ivy and also by the mosquito bites and just their general dehydrated state. But beyond that, physically, and that's the underline, physically, they seem to be all right. What they've gone through mentally, we can only begin to imagine. But we don't believe that they had a large supply of food. And the question by many locals here is, who was providing them? Who was supplying them, because they had to eat at some point.
Which leads us to Dave Mack. I want to go to Dave Mack right now, joining us from Birmingham, Alabama, talk show host, WAAX Radio. There have now been more arrests in this case, correct?
There have. Gene, actually, these were associated with the investigation. Three different people have been arrested. One was for lying to the police during the investigation, and the others were for weapons violations. And one of those charged with the weapons violations, I believe, is the one who gave Adam Mays the gun that he eventually shot himself with.
So, two more arrests now, felony possession of a firearm, giving it to Adam Mays, and also false information for a law enforcement officer. Martin Savage, do we have any more information on these additional arrests and what they did to help Adam Mays?
The information we have, Gene, is that in one case it was somebody who supplied false information, gave maybe misleading information when authorities questioned them about perhaps the whereabouts of Mays or perhaps the whereabouts of the children. The other two are thought to have supplied a gun, and it would turn out that this was the same gun that Mays used to take his life.
You know, Martin Savage, our sources are saying that potentially both of the victims, the mother and the daughter, were strangled in that garage adjacent to their home. Any information on the ground in regard to that?
Yeah, no, that's what authorities are now saying. Up until we heard the death of Mays and, of course, the rescue of these two girls, authorities had not spoken openly about how their mother and older sister had died. But now they are saying that, yes, in both cases, they died of strangulation. All
right, because he didn't have a gun, it sounds like. I want to go to Rick Foster right now. Everybody, this is an exclusive primetime guest here on HLN on Nancy Grace's show. He is a very, very close friend of Gary Bain, the father in all of this, who has lost his wife and lost his daughter, now reunited with his two living daughters. Rick, thank you so much for joining us tonight from Tennessee. You have spoken to Gary several times. I want to know, the first time you spoke with Gary last night, what did you say to him and what did he say to you?
I asked Gary if he had heard anything about them possibly finding Adam and his girls, and I told him that Sheriff John Doolin had posted on his Facebook page that the two girls were alive and the perpetrator was dead, and he verified that and said if John said it, then it's true. And there was a lot of commotion going on in the background with phones ringing and like we had been doing all week. I'll get back to you. I'll get back to you.
Rick, what did you hear in Gary's voice? What was his state of mind through that phone?
It was, he's been really emotional the whole entire 13 days. And last night it was a breath of relief, but also maybe some apprehension. Until I see him, I'm not going to believe it.
Rick, how did Gary get to where his girls were? What happened after that phone call you had with him?
I attempted to call back, and we played phone tag for a few minutes, and I said, is everything okay? And he said, I'm doing great. I'm doing fine. I'm with good people. I'm not driving. I said, are you going to them? And he says, I'm on my way to them under escort. And so I asked him, I said, are you going very far? Because initially we heard maybe they were being brought through a different route than what they were. And he said, it'll be a little bit of a trip. And he said, I'll call you back. So that was the end of that call. He was excited.
What happened when he got to the hospital, Rick?
I asked him if he texted me and said he was at Le Bonheur in Memphis. And I asked about the media. I said, are you able to get to the actual area that the kids are at? And he said, not at first, but the sheriff's department had taken care of that issue, and they had finally gotten in. And he would call me as soon as he made contact with the children. And I didn't hear anything for several hours. And that kind of got us a little bit concerned. And then a little bit later, another person with him texted us and said, believe it or not, we still haven't seen them yet, but we're told they're okay and that they were being examined.
What are you left with, Rick Foster, when you look and think about your dear friend that has lost his wife, lost one of his daughters, to be reunited with two children that are psychologically so traumatized now?
What are my thoughts?
What are you left with? Yes.
I'm just, I am so glad that prayers were answered and that they left him, some children. But at the same time, I'm obviously upset about the loss of his wife and his oldest daughter.
Rick, tell me about this family.
It was a great family. It was a very close family, a very loving family. The kids were always happy. We interacted with them in many activities, birthday parties, baseball games, baseball practice, softball practice, school. Our kids went to school with their kids. We went to dinner as couples. We went and saw the movie Twilight at the grand opening, midnight showing a year and a half or so ago. Just a very, very close-knit, loving family. And just a family that didn't deserve this.
This is a family that helped Adam Mays, right, Rick Foster?
I'm sorry?
This is a family that helped Adam Mays. Didn't your good friend Gary give him odd jobs and help him any way he could?
Yeah, he would come up and work on cars, help do little details around the house, mow the lawn, anything that Gary needed assistance with. Yeah, absolutely. He befriended the family. He was very trusted. The kids adored him. They called him Uncle. Gary took him in almost as a son.
The sheriff who first saw them said he told them it was going to be okay and gave them a big hug.
When I gazed around, you could see one of the children's head on the ground. I believe Officer Haney was the first one to holler, "Get your hands up." I began giving commands. The little girl picked her head up. The other little girl picked her head up after another command. Mr. Hayes began to raise his head. I could see a weapon in his hand. I hollered gun 3 times loud to let my team know that there was a weapon involved.
We can't forget about Joanne and Adrian Mays, who did not deserve to die the way they did.
I'm Jean Casares in for Nancy Grace. A miracle has happened. Kylea Bain and Alexandria Bain have been found alive. They have been reunited with their father after a horrendous days in the woods, dehydrated, thirsty, longing for food, but they are alive. I want to go out to Dave Mack, talk show host, WAAX Radio. I want to go over again where these girls were finally found. Were there 31 law enforcement officers that actually surrounded the scene at that point?
That's what it seems like. Gene, this cabin behind the church where the police were first tipped off that it was that tip was just, hey, there's a cabin that has power. You might want to go check it. Well, the police had already checked it before, but they were just leaving no stone unturned, and so they went back. And when they started looking back in there again, that's when one of the officers actually saw Alexandria and saw her, and that's when they knew. But the place had already been searched before. It is off the beaten path behind the church, and it's very rough out there, but still, they'd already checked the cabin once before, but they just were not going to give up. They were checking it again, and that's when this all happened.
With us right now exclusively on Nancy Grace's show is Josie Tate. She is Adam Mays' mother-in-law. She is the daughter of Teresa Mays, the only person at this point charged with a double murder. Ms. Tate, thank you so much for joining us again. I first want to ask you, why do you think he saved the lives of the girls? Because last night you said that you thought and you were so concerned that he would shoot himself and he would shoot the girls. Why did he spare their lives?
I don't know. I really honestly don't know. We probably will never know the answer to that. I pray that somewhere in him, somewhere in that evil monster that he was, there was some compassion for those children. Thank God they were found alive.
Ms. Tate, the one reality is that since Adam Mays was a coward in one sense, he saved a lot of lives because he could have harmed so many people, but he was a coward when he took that gun to his own head. It is your daughter that virtually will be, it's believed, the only one charged with a double homicide.
That's correct. I'm very concerned and very worried now that my daughter may have to face the charges all on her own, no one else to share the guilt with her.
She could have been a cooperating witness if Adam Mays was alive, but he's not. He's gone. Have you spoken with her? What do you want to say to her?
I have not spoken with her at this time. I want to say that I love her and I'm there for her if she needs me. All she has to do is reach out to me and I'll be there for her.
Rescued Kalia and Alexandria, the two missing girls from Tennessee. Agents moved in to rescue Kalia and Alexandria, who were lying on the ground.
Alexandria and Kalia Bain are said to have been hungry, thirsty, and dehydrated.
I'm Jean Casares in for Nancy Grace. We are taking your calls tonight. Two young girls are alive. Their lives were saved while Adam Mays shot himself in the head, but dropped right before them behind that church in Mississippi. I want to go out to Lori in Tennessee right now. Thank you for joining us. Lori, what's your question?
What was the reasoning for him taking this family to start out with?
You're talking about motive, and that is a question that may never be answered. Let's go out to Martin Savage, CNN correspondent. Of course, motive does not have to be proven in court, but motive will be very, very important. Why is it believed that he took the girls and their mother to begin with?
Well, it appears, according to neighbors and according to Teresa Mays, the wife of Adam Mays, she says that he had an obsession, perhaps almost a sick obsession with these two young girls especially. And it seems that Kalia and Alexandria, to him, neighbors said he thought they were his own children. Well, the Bain family was in the process of getting ready to move to Arizona. And it is possible, some have speculated, that he just couldn't tolerate the separation. He couldn't stand being away from these two girls. So that's what motivated him. That's why he killed Mom. That's why he killed the older daughter. That's why he saved the lives and preserved the lives of the two youngest.
But you know, Lori, in Tennessee, one of the things with the remaining wife of Adam Mays that is charged, her motive could be she believed that her husband was having an affair and that these girls could have been his. So that could create motive with her, motive that may have a lot of, in her mind, reality. So that could be a big concern for her case. I want to go out to another very exclusive guest with us tonight, Brenda Foster. She is the best friend of Joanne Bain. Joanne Bain, who was strangled, we believe, to death in her garage right next to her home with her daughter. Brenda Foster, how did you find out that the girls were alive?
Through a phone call.
I understand you were at a game last night in a stadium, and they actually stopped the game and made an announcement that the two sisters had been found alive?
Yes, that is correct. They made an announcement here at the town of Bolivar at the local baseball games.
What did the crowd do?
Everyone was excited and happy that they were found safe and alive.
What has this community been going through to know there was a manhunt, to know that 2 young lives were in the balance?
Everyone has been afraid and very afraid, especially for these 2 girls. Everyone has come together, as the community come together and done everything they can.
The girls were hungry, thirsty, and dehydrated.
A lot of prayers were answered whenever we found these 2 young ladies to be safe. Unfortunately, the suspect did take his own life. But at the end of the day, 2 young ladies returned home to their father safely.
They appeared to be suffering from exposure, dehydration, and poison ivy.
I'm Jean Casares in for Nancy Grace. In an absolute miracle, Kylia Bain and her sister were found alive. Found alive in an absolute miracle after they lost their mother and their sister. I want to go out to Martin Savage, CNN correspondent, standing by live in Alpine, Mississippi. Martin, where are the girls right now?
As far as we know, they've been reunited with their father. Now, where the family has gone since then, we don't know. There is a lot of healing that is going to have to take place, and we're, of course, not talking about the physical kind because they were released from the hospital after just a few hours of a quick checkup. But it's going to be the healing part of over so much that we cannot even begin to imagine that they have lost, had to endure, right up to the very end, right up to the moment they were rescued. They had to watch at least one more tragedy. And that was, of course, Adam Baines taking his own life directly in front of them and then falling to the ground practically at their feet. It's
unbelievable. It truly is. Ellie Josted, Nancy Grace producer, joining us from New York. The girls were actually at 2 different hospitals. Ellie, describe for us what hospital they originally were at and then transported to yet another one.
Right. Initially, they went to Baptist Memorial Hospital, which is in New Albany, Mississippi. It's only about 17 miles or so away from Alpine, Mississippi, where they were located. Then they were taken to another hospital, Le Bonheur Hospital. It's a children's hospital in Memphis. They were treated there. We believe they underwent a more thorough examination there at that hospital. As we heard earlier, they were dehydrated, treated for exposure, treated for poison ivy. Apparently they had a bad case of that as well. And then they were released to their father.
Let's go out to Dr. Marty McCary, M.D., joining us from Washington, D.C., physician and professor of public health at Johns Hopkins University. How do you think is the health of these young girls? Because poison ivy, dehydration, exhaustion, what about ticks out in the woods?
Sure, that's a concern. You know, it's a good thing that children are more resilient than adults in general when stress affects their body. A person can normally only live about a week or 2 without water, and the children were essentially on the cusp. Now, the most important thing they get checked for is kidney failure, because that dehydration affects blood flow to the kidney, and that, of course, could be a permanent effect. Now, I'm glad to hear they were released, but I'm sure they're on medications for the poison ivy, and they have to be sure to be on a strict diet to not eat too fast. That can throw off electrolytes and be dangerous as well.
And, you know, we had heard that actually people were giving them food when they originally were taken in by law enforcement, being transported to that hospital. Let's go to the callers. Allie in Arizona. Hi, Allie.
Hi, Jean. Thanks for taking my call.
Of course.
You know, my question is, who's going to handle these children as far as counseling goes? You know, my children suffered some things, and it's minute to this. I mean, I thought it was catastrophic, of course, and I had them in counseling for years, and they're 29, 30, and 31, and they're still scarred by that. And, I mean, the community, I understand, is doing what they can, but who's going to help these girls long time with the mental issues that they have to be having? My kids had their mother. You know, these poor girls don't even have that.
It's a question that I've had. I wanted to answer. Let's go to Brian Russell tonight, who is a Ph.D. forensic psychologist. Brian, many questions. But first of all, should they have gone home so soon? Is that good for them psychologically?
Well, that depends on where home is. If they're with their father and by all accounts their father's a good father and it's a safe environment for them, then that's probably a good place for them to be. Surrounding themselves with the sense of safety and social support is important. But as the caller suggested, of course, over time, they're also going to need excellent psychological care to deal with the things that are manifesting right now and also with things that are unpredictable that may come up, weeks, months, and years from now, stemming back to this. They will probably have the obvious grief over the loss of their mother and sister, the obvious trauma from being kidnapped, and even watching their kidnapper kill himself was a very traumatic event. But they also may actually have, and this is sort of paradoxical, but they may have some survivor guilt about having been spared.
Well, Brian Russell, let me ask you this question again, knowing that they were abducted from their home. They were taken, we believe, to the garage next to the home where they witnessed and watched their mother and their sister be murdered. Do you still agree that they should have gone home so soon?
Well, I didn't get the sense, Gene, that that's where they had gone with their father. If that is truly where they've gone back to the crime scene, then I agree with you. I would have concerns about that. I would want to examine them and see how they felt about that. But it sounded to me like the father was with them, but that they had gone somewhere else, somewhere neutral and safe.
All right, let's go to C.W. Jensen, retired Portland police officer, joining us tonight from Cave Creek, Arizona. There was a time span of hours, maybe 5-6 hours, that the young girls were in the hospital, and I would think they would have been interviewed by law enforcement over the night, correct?
Oh, I think that to some degree they were interviewed. As a detective in the past in traumatic cases like this, my biggest concern would have just been their safety and handing them off to the medical people. I would have been very concerned about possible physical or sexual abuse. So the answers that I might want for the investigation really are secondary to my concern for the children and their health and getting them back to a secure environment. We can always talk to them later.
Okay, that's interesting. Want to go to a very, very special guest tonight, exclusively with us, Brenda Foster. She is the best friend of Joanne Bain, the mother in all of this, a very beloved mother. Brenda, talk to us about this family, your friend Joanne. When was the last time you spoke with her before she was abducted and murdered?
I spoke to Joanne on Wednesday night before this happened.
And what did she say? What did she tell you?
We were just talking, normal talk. We went to the same college, and we were talking about our schoolwork, and it was just a normal conversation.
So after raising a family, Joanne Bain was going back to school. What did she want to get her degree in, Brenda?
Elementary education.
Oh. Wow. What did she ever say to you about Adam?
She never said a bad word about him. They looked at him as a family member. She introduced me to him as he was kind of like a son to them.
There couldn't be any truth, correct? What has been speculated on, that Adam and Joanne Bain were close, very close?
Not in any kind of intimate way, no.
Did Adam live with the Bains at their home?
No.
Never?
No, not that I'm aware. I know he visited quite a bit, and as far as I know, he didn't live with them.
What about the baseball games? Did you see him at the stadium?
Yes, he was there quite often. He practiced with the kids, and he watched their games.
Did you ever think, Brenda, there was something not right, that there was something not to be trusted in Adam Mays?
No, not really. Just because I trusted Joanne, and I trusted her thoughts and all that on him.
Brenda, what is it going to be like for you to lose your best friend?
It's very hard. We've been friends since kindergarten. It's 26 years. It's very difficult.
trying to take cover.
Our FBI task force rescued Kalia and Alexandria, the two missing girls from Tennessee. The girls were found alive and appear to be unharmed.
I'm Jean Casares in for Nancy Grace. Two sisters, Kalia Bain and Alexandria Bain, alive tonight through a miracle. Adam Mays shooting himself in the head while the girls watched. And with us tonight exclusively is Josie Tate. She is the mother of Teresa Mays, who was the wife of Adam. She is charged with 2 counts of homicide, double murder. Josie Tate, you say that you believe your daughter was coerced in all of this, but the fact is she has confessed that she was not only present, but she even drove the car that held the bodies of Joanne and her daughter.
That's correct. However, Teresa was scared of Adam. If she didn't do just as Adam told her to do, she would suffer the results of Adam's fist.
Everybody,
Adam was
go ahead, Ms. Tate.
Adam was a control freak, and it's on record. There's police records of domestic violence against my daughter. Teresa was scared of Adam.
All right, everybody, we want to show you, we do have some exclusive video of the scene where they were found. Right there, you are looking at where 2 young girls were on their stomachs. And that is part of the crime scene right there. There's a red substance, and they witnessed Adam Mays shooting himself, but they were saved. I want to go out to the attorneys right now because we've got some legal angles here. Kirby Clements, defense attorney, joining us out of Atlanta, and Bremner, defense attorney, joining us out of Seattle. You heard what Josie Tate just said about her daughter. Her daughter has got a serious situation, charged with double murder. Will it help at all if she says, I was coerced in doing all of this? Kirby Clements.
Well, coercion is not going to be a defense to the crime of murder. It can be a defense to the crime of kidnapping. But I think her better defense is going to have to be to say that I was present when he killed him, but I didn't participate. And that would be the best thing that she would have.
Here's the problem, Ann Bremner. There isn't anybody else. She can't become the star witness for the prosecution for Adam Mays, who is the one they would want because he's gone now. So she's the one that they want, and there has to be justice in this case.
Well, you're exactly right, Jean, as always. And, you know, in a case like this, the only thing she's going to be able to do is say, you know, I wasn't complicit. You know, it's got to be more than mere presence, of course, at the scene of a homicide to be complicit. It's presence plus readiness to assist. So if she's just there and this thing happens, she may have some kind of defense. But the fact of the matter is she's driving the car with the body after the fact. That's rendering criminal assistance a Class C felony. So she's got that at a minimum. And they may have more evidence to show her complicity in the actual homicide. And she's the last woman standing.
But Ann Bremner, let's look at her state of mind. She thought that her husband was having an affair with Joanne Bain. She believed the delusion, too. She even left her husband because of that. So doesn't that give, we don't have to prove motive, I understand that, but doesn't that give her an intent to be at that scene, to aid and assist and help in any way?
Well, that's sure. Absolutely, that can be used. I mean, this whole case is so bizarre. But if she's in a separate reality and has that kind of, you know, sense, you know, and reason to commit a homicide or a felony, then the answer is yes. And the fact is there's no other witnesses. There's no living witnesses to what happened here. And because she's the only one left, the prosecution, I think, is going to really go after her and use that kind of evidence that you've just described.
You know, Kirby Clements, there are living witnesses. There are eyewitnesses. These 2 young girls whose life were saved, it's believed they witnessed everything.
Oh, and that, first of all, is just horrible for those little girls. It's just terrible. I can't even imagine it. But they're going to be the ones that give you insight into what happened when their mother and their sister were killed. And if they put Teresa actively involved, then she's going down. She's going down hard. So that it's horrible. They got to relive it. But it's just a terrible situation.
Real hard, Kirby Clements. Mary in Virginia. Hi, Mary.
Oh, hi, Jean. Great talking with you.
Thank
I think
you
you're
for
a great reporter, crime reporter.
Thanks.
My question, I have to change it because someone already asked it before, but I have 2 questions. since they're out of the hospital, do we know for a fact they're with their father, and do we know where they're staying? And number two, do we know for sure that they did actually witness the murder of their mother and sister? And if not, have they been told?
You know, Mary, we believe that they were all in the garage next to the home, and yes, that they witnessed that. That is what is believed at this point. Of course, only they know, right? And they now have just been with law enforcement for the first time. I want to go to Rick Foster, who is a very close friend of Gary Bain. He is the father of these children. What do you know, Rick?
As far as I know, they're with their father. As far as, are you referring to the crime itself?
I'll ask you that. Do you know if these girls witnessed everything in the garage? What did Gary tell you about waking up and not knowing where his family was?
I can't comment on that. I'm sorry.
Do you believe that they witnessed their mother and their sister being murdered?
If they weren't still in the house, I would assume so.
All right, and we know those children are with their father tonight, safe and secure.
Christopher Mays to the FBI's 10 most wanted fugitives list. By doing this, we are enlisting one of our most powerful weapons against crime, you, the public.
And we have also learned that these two young girls and Adam Mays were found 2 miles from Adam Mays' home. I want to go out to Dr. Marty McCary, physician, professor of public health at Johns Hopkins University. What type of examinations were done to these young girls at the hospital?
Well, the most important thing is that they are checked for signs of end organ damage from the dehydration. You know, often when kids come in like this, they're dehydrated, malnourished, and they're confused because their blood flow to the brain has been decreased. Sometimes they don't know where they are, and sometimes they're not even hungry. That's how far along these kids can get.
All right. I want to go back to Josie Tate. She is the mother of Teresa Mays, charged with double murder. Ms. Tate, I want to know how you're doing tonight, because you didn't cause any of this, and here you are at the center with your daughter potentially facing the death penalty.
I'm fighting for my daughter's life. I am in the biggest fight now that I have ever been in. My daughter is just as much a victim of Adam Mays as the Baines family.
What do you want to say to your daughter?
Teresa, I love you. Hang in there, girl. Stay tough, 'cause Mama's here for you. You can get through this.
All right. Tonight, let us stop to remember.